living room in Central Ohio. I hope that wherever you are, you're safe, healthy, and comfortable. I thank you for joining me today for this final concert of the River Cities Symphony Orchestra's Winter Virtual Performance Season. Today we are going to Baroque and Roll with solo flute works by Baroque era composers. As a young flutist, I fell in love with music of the Baroque era, a period roughly from 1600 to 1750. From age 11 through the end of my formal education years later, music from this period was a mainstay of my training, which may be surprising to some of you, as in my professional career, I've overwhelmingly championed works of living composers. To me, though, approaching music from 300 years ago and newly composed works is strikingly similar. For instance, there are no recordings available from Baroque composers' lifetimes, just as there are no recordings yet of world premiere works. So in both cases, the performer has to dive deep into the scores to divine the composer's intent, searching for clues in form, phrasing, and pattern like a musical detective. Interpretation plays a huge role in performing music from both of these periods. Baroque scores typically lack most articulation, dynamic, and ornamentation indications. And while a new piece may have 10 times as many markings from the composer, getting that music off the page and into the ears of an audience relies just as heavily on well-informed decisions by the performer. We're starting off today's Baroque rock concert with two of Georg Philippe Telemann's 12 Fantasias for solo flute. Telemann's birthday is today. He is 340 years old, and he grew up playing the flute. To that end, he exploited all aspects of the Baroque flute's expressive and technical powers when composing this monumental set of works which span the time period's full range of forms. We're first going to hear the D minor Fantasia, which opens with a dolce movement, one of the very few slow movements in this entire set of works, followed by an allegro music in strict fugue form, and then finishing with a light spirituoso movement in 3/2-10. The next Fantasia in D major is lopsided. It begins with a very long French overture-style opening movement marked alla francese, followed by a very short presto chaser. So please enjoy some fantasy from 1727 in Hamburg, Germany, with the Fantasias 6 and 7 by Telemann. My dog is giving us his approval. Oh. The thing I miss most during these pandemic times is you, the audience. I miss that energy of being in the same space with people experiencing live music. Though I certainly love the convenience of live streaming concerts from my home, that interaction with audience members like you is the biggest loss of these times for me. Today, though, we have a unique opportunity to have a conversation, because after the next piece, we're going to have a question and answer session in real time. All you need to do is type your question into the comments on this live streaming video from the River Cities Symphony's Facebook page, and I'll answer them. It's your opportunity to ask me anything you'd like. Why is part of my flute made of wood? What's your philosophy on Baroque ornamentation? Why isn't my dog on the screen yet? Anything you'd like. So think of those questions as we get ready for the next piece. Our last work today is by viol virtuoso Marin Marais, a court musician for Kings Louis XIV and XV of France. But the source music for this piece is far older. La Folia is a 16-bar anonymous chaconne in 3/4 time, and it's one of the oldest European musical themes in existence. You'll hear this at the very opening of the piece. Marais then composed a set of elaborate variations for the viol on this theme called Les Folies d'Espagne, literally the Folies of Spain, with the intent that it would be transcribed for other instruments, specifically flute. Now, for those wanting to count along at home, I will perform 20 of these variations for you this afternoon, not including the theme, showing off the immense range of Marais' variations, from dancing sarabands to well-ornamented laments, and from music that evokes clacking castanets and strumming guitars to flat-out virtuosity. Please enjoy an afternoon folly from 1707 in Paris, France, with Les Folies d'Espagne by Marais. wherever you are this afternoon. Thank you for Baroque and Rolling with me. It's my sincere hope that you've enjoyed hearing these marvelous Baroque works as much as I've enjoyed performing them for you. My lovely assistant, my fabulous husband, Chris, is going to pull up the live chat now from the River City Symphony's Facebook page to begin our question and answer session. But before, I want to send 1,000 thanks to the River City Symphony for ideating and implementing this winter virtual performance season, and to the Marietta Community Foundation and 740 Social for sponsoring my performance today. It's my great pleasure to serve as principal flutist of the River City Symphony, and I can't wait to be back with the orchestra performing in person for live audiences again as soon as it's safe to do so. Please visit the RCSO's website at www.rcso.info to be the first to know about upcoming performances. Okay, so let's start some questions and answers. Lovely assistant, what do we hear from our audience?
Well, the first burning question is from Bob Terreziani. Where's Jack?
I freely admit that this question is a plant. I saw RCSO conductor and artistic director Bob Terreziani yesterday in Charleston, and I said, if there aren't any questions in the chat, make sure you ask for my dog. If you don't know, Bob is a huge fellow dog fan. He has just adopted an adorable little miniature Australian Shepherd named Bella. So start pestering him to bring Bella to River City's events once our concerts are back up and running. Let me grab Jack for you. Okay. Want to come visit, buddy? So this is my buddy. This is Jack the Bichon. And he's an official flute dog. When we first started the pandemic a year ago, my first few live streaming recitals here from my home, Jack would always come and curl up in a little ball right here by my music stand. And so he became a little bit of a feature on my early pandemic concerts. And he really does love the flute. Anytime I'm playing, he likes to be in my studio with me. And he even likes listening to lessons online. So that's a good sign. So he says, hello audience, hello Bob, I can't wait to meet Bella. All right, you good to go, buddy? There he goes, he's off. All right, what other questions do we have?
Brian McMichael asked about the unusual flute head you are using.
Well, thank you for that wonderful question, McDoc. So I play what's known as a Bim Flute. It was patented in 1841 by Theobald Bim in Germany. And it's this metal tube which has this familiar series of rods and keywork and springs that allows for us to play all chromatic pitches on the flute with relative ease, and in all 24 major and minor keys with relative ease. Prior to that, there were many different versions of the flute, mostly made of wood. So the flute that would have been played at the time of Telemann and Marais writing would have been a wooden traverso, what we call the Baroque flute. It would have been made all of wood. I would have been lucky to have just one little key. And it is one of the only regrets of my life that I have never learned how to play the Baroque flute myself. I think the sound is magical. It's very organic and evocative and voice-like. It sounds very woody. And so I, a few years ago, purchased this wonderful head joint made by an artisanal flute maker down in the Carolinas. This is by a company called the Able Flute Company. So I play on a Mopani wood head joint that fits onto my Bim flute. I like to play this for solo works, for chamber pieces, for small orchestral winds, basically anything from before 1840, when that sound of wood for the flute really would have been in the composer's mind. And I think that this feeling of more resistance and a natural timbre the way it makes me use my air, the way it makes me hear harmonies due to the larger amount of fundamentals, really informs specifically my performance of Baroque music. Though I don't play traverso, it's my little ability to try. So thanks for the great question, Brian.
And actually several other people had asked about that as well.
Oh, cool.
So that was nice. Bill White asks, do you ever improvise and simply play what your imagination is telling you?
Oh, Bill, boy, have you ever hit the hot spot, yeah? So, like lots of classically trained musicians, improvisation is the scariest, dirtiest word you can possibly say to me. Improvisation is a frightening concept for someone who's grown up and come all the way through for decades looking at little black dots on the page and trying to get really specific to the composer's intent. Now, of course, interestingly enough, in the Baroque era, most musicians not only played a keyboard instrument and then maybe a string or wind instrument as well, but they also composed, they could also improvise because they were so much more steeped in harmonic language and theory. So at the time, I'm sure that Marais probably got out his viol and started improvising, and that's how he came up with a lot of these wonderful variations for the Folies d'Espagne. But I myself do not improvise. It's a skill, again, that I wish I had. I sometimes do directed improvisation when doing works by living composers. So if you're interested specifically in that, I steer you towards my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Lindsey Goodman fans. And you can search for a piece by Tony Zilincik, Z-I-L-I-N-C-I-K, which was written for me called I Asked You. And that piece, the second movement, is a wholly improvised work for solo flute with fixed media, with some directions. But every time I play that, that's different. I believe there are maybe 3 different versions up on my YouTube channel, so you can see what happens when I improvise. Trust me, it sounds nothing like Marais. Great question, Bill.
Joshua Lanham asks, we loved your Baroque ornamentation. Can you say more about your choices and Baroque ornamentation in general?
I am being led down the garden path. So Josh and his wonderful wife, Faith, are Baroque music aficionados. These are 2 wonderful musician friends out in California. Faith actually has her doctorate and has done amazing work on Baroque music of Mexico, actually. So here are people who really know about Baroque ornamentation and can put my knowledge to shame. That being said, I really love to experiment with ornamentation. Those who might know these pieces will have noticed that in the Telemann, for instance, there are lots of repeats, all of which I decided not to take today on a program of all solo flute works. I figured it was better to continue introducing more material, but in the Baroque style specifically, when sections or movements would be repeated, it would be traditional, of course, to add ornamentation at that point. Now, for those who don't know what I'm talking about when I say ornamentation, I mean little trills and mordents and turns and added figurations. In lots of ways, the Folies d'Espagne is like one long series of ornamentations on the original La Folia melody. In the Telemann, because I chose not to take repeats today, I decided to do all the ornamentation right off the bat. I decided to gild the lily, and then decorate the lily, and then do the opposite of Coco Chanel and put on 3 more things before I left the house. So for the Telemann, I like to throw everything at it because I was only doing it once through. In that piece, I especially liked playing around with the final movements, the spirituoso and the presto, because they are in rondo form. So the same theme keeps coming back. So I enjoyed trying to find different ways to add passing tones and mordents and little trills and flourishes to make each of those a little bit different, so that you could get different angles on each of those statements of the theme. Much like in the way Monet would paint the exact same haystack at multiple times of day. So I enjoyed doing that in the Telemann. In the Marais, I have to give a shout out to this wonderful edition, which is done by, I can't remember his name, oh my goodness, Hans-Peter Schmidt. So he did the research originally to arrange the Le Folie d'Espagne for flute according to Marais' wishes back in 1956. So a great deal of the ornamentation I'd say maybe 60% come from Schmidt's edition for Baron Reiter, and the rest is my imagination gone wild. I especially love reverse mordants. So anytime I can put a reverse mordant in, I'm happy. And Faith, I look forward to a long email about why my choices were or were not correct and how I could have done better. So thank you in advance for that.
Linda Kernahan, tell us about the daily etude odyssey you followed over the past year.
Well, thank you for asking, Linda. So as we know, this week is an anniversary week, right? The 1 year anniversary of the day that the world changed. For me, the world officially changed on March 12th. That was the day after the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 an official pandemic. I had driven down to Charleston, West Virginia for a cycle of rehearsals and concerts with my orchestra. We were going to play Bartok Concerto for Orchestra. And when I arrived at the hall, the door was locked. So that's how a lot of musicians found this week last year, with a lot of sudden cancellations. So I was driving home. I had about 3 hours in the car to think. And as those 3 hours passed, I kept getting more and more emails and texts as cancellations mounted. Started with 1 weekend, and then 2 weekends, and then 3 weekends. And by the time I got home, I think about 6 weeks of work had been canceled over the course of that 3 hour car ride. It was a really sad and despondent time. So suddenly, for the first time in my life, I had nothing to practice. And I would like to think that I'm an optimistic person. So the next day, March 13th, 2020, I said, okay, I have nothing to practice. I could put the flute in my case, or I could do something. There's an old adage that says you're either getting better or you're getting worse. And I chose to try to get better with the time that I had suddenly free. So I grabbed all of my favorite etude books from every period of my study. And for each day of this past pandemic year, today is day 366 for those counting, I have learned 1 page of an etude and posted mostly full pages, but sometimes just snippets, on my personal Facebook page. And I called it my stay-at-home etude odyssey. So it's my personal attempt to continue to get better at my craft. And I do feel that a year later, I am a better flutist than I was when this pandemic started. And that is something that no amount of COVID-19 can ever take from me. So it feels like a really empowering thing. It's been really fun. And I appreciate all the support from friends and students and colleagues who have watched my crazy etude videos, most often in athleisure wear before I go running for an entire year.
Linda also wanted to know more about your rule for how many days per week a music student should practice.
Oh, what a wonderful question, Professor Kernahan. So Linda Kernahan is a professor of music at Otterbein University here in Central Ohio in Westerville. And I think that's a wonderful question. So there's another old adage which I really like regarding practice, which is that you should only practice on the days you eat. So there's your simple answer. That being said, me personally, when dealing with my students of all ages, I like to come up with a number of minutes or hours per day that I think a particular student should practice per week. And how they choose to accomplish that time is really up to them. Because I'm a realist, especially when we're dealing with students, even as young as elementary school, they really have a lot of activities, they have a lot of schoolwork. By the time you get to college, you have a lot of responsibilities. So I often like to talk about a specific amount of time per day or amount of time per week that you should practice. And I encourage my students to plan ahead, to take a moment to look at the week and say, well, here I have projects due, here I have a concert, here I have lots of homework or band rehearsal or whatever it is, and notice when you can and when you can't practice, when you have bigger and smaller times to get that in. But I do really encourage as much as you can for daily practice, with, of course, healthy breaks when necessitated. So I hope that's a good encouragement for your students, Professor Carnahan.
We had a question earlier from, where did it go? From Val Cox. Shoot, sorry, here it is. First of all, he said, beautiful, Lindsey. And I've always wondered when is the course of La Folia?
Oh, okay. So I love hearing from Val. Val Cox is an amazing visual artist. I highly recommend that you check him out. Val M. Cox, C-O-X. Please go find his amazing, innovative canvases. They're truly incredible. He is a fellow Baroque music nut. So quick side note about Val. A few years ago, what was that, maybe 6 years ago, 5 years ago, my husband and I went for vacation in Germany, and I needed to take this pilgrimage. As I mentioned in my comments today, I've been in love with Baroque music since I was about 11. It was literally my first love, well, maybe horses, and then Baroque music. So I needed to take this pilgrimage to Leipzig, where Johann Sebastian Bach spent most of his working time. Got to go see the wonderful Thomas Kierke, where he was the music director and organist, and where many of his seminal works were premiered. Visited the Bach Museum Leipzig, and I even saw his grave. And this pilgrimage is one that Val had always wanted to go on too. So the day we went to visit Bach's grave, my husband and I went, and at Val's request, I bought red roses, and I ceremonially placed them on Bach's grave from Val and I. So that's how much of a Baroque music nerd this wonderful audience member and I are. So La Folia, in terms of its source, this is one of the great mysteries. It literally is older than anyone actually knows. It's completely anonymous. No one knows who composed it or when. It's thought to be Spanish in origin. It does have the characteristics of a typical 16-bar chaconne with an 8-bar harmony that repeats twice. And this, of course, was a form that was used throughout the Baroque. But we really don't know where it came from. By the time that Marais was writing in 1707, it was already hundreds of years old. And I love this idea of it being one of the great untold mysteries of European musical history. And the fact that so many people have set La Folia in various ways along the centuries is one of the things that really connects us in European art music circles. I love that.
That seems like it's about it.
Wonderful. Well then, I just want to say that thank you to everyone for sharing this concert and conversation with me this afternoon. And thanks again to the River City Symphony, the Marietta Community Foundation, and 740 Social for the opportunity to perform for you today. Please connect with me at lindseygoodman.com, or since you're watching on Facebook, at facebook.com/LindseyGoodmanFlutist. And until we're all together enjoying music again in person, be well.